Mariah Carey stood backstage at the Late Night America studio, her sequined cream gown catching the dim lights as she prepared for her interview segment. Her heart raced, not from the usual pre-show jitters that even a veteran of 30 years in D.C., the spotlight occasionally feels, but from what she had just witnessed on the monitor. Bill Maher, the sharp-tongued political commentator and host, had spent the last 3 minutes of his opening monologue taking direct aim at her. Mariah Carey, America's so-called songbird, hasn't had a relevant hit in 15 years? He had smirked to audience laughter. Yet, she's releasing another Christmas album. How many times can you repackage the same song? It's May, by the way. Perhaps she's confused or just desperate for attention. The audience had gasped, then awkwardly laughed. Maher wasn't finished. She calls herself the Queen of Christmas, but I think the royalty check bounced years ago. Maybe it's time to abdicate the throne and let someone with actual vocal range take over. As the producer counted down to her segment, Mariah took a deep breath. The 54-year-old superstar with 5 Grammys and more #1 hits than any solo artist in history wasn't about to let a political talk show host, who'd never sung a note professionally in his life, tear down her legacy on national television. Not tonight, not ever. Maher thought he was clever, sitting there in his tailored suit, ready to belittle her to her face. What he didn't know was that Mariah Carey hadn't survived 3 decades in a cutthroat industry by accident. She had receipts. She had truth. And in the next 15 minutes, the entire nation would see who really deserved to wear a crown. Before diving into this dramatic confrontation, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to catch all our latest celebrity showdowns. This is one face-off you won't want to miss. The studio lights beamed down on Bill Maher as he sat confidently behind his desk, sipping water and adjusting his notes after the commercial break. At 68, the political satirist and host of Late Night America had built his career on controversy, sharp criticism, and an unwillingness to back down. His signature style, a mixture of political commentary and cynical takedowns of public figures, had earned him a dedicated audience and a reputation for being untouchable. Welcome back to Late Night America. Maher addressed the camera with his characteristic smirk. My next guest is someone who appears every December like retail Christmas decorations in October. Too early and staying too long. Scattered laughter rippled through the audience. She sold millions of records, but lately seems more interested in selling her brand than music. Please welcome, if you must, Mariah Carey. Behind the curtain, Mariah's assistant squeezed her hand. You don't have to go out there. We can cancel. Mariah shook her head, diamond earrings catching the light. No, this isn't just about me. This is about every artist he's belittled, every woman he's dismissed as past her prime. Someone needs to stand up to him. For Mariah, this wasn't simply about defending her Christmas music or her legacy. Throughout her career, she had faced criticism about everything from her mixed-race heritage to her age to her vocal abilities. After a few difficult performances years ago, she had overcome a challenging childhood, broken free from a controlling early marriage, battled mental health issues, and rebuilt her career multiple times. She had done it all while raising twins and creating music that touched millions. Maher, meanwhile, had spent decades building a reputation as the intellectual bully of late night, a man who prided himself on telling it like it is, while rarely facing consequences for crossing lines. His commentary on female artists had grown increasingly dismissive in recent years, often reducing their entire careers to jokes about age or appearance rather than acknowledging their artistic contributions. And coming up, Maher continued to the camera, we'll be discussing why some celebrities just can't gracefully exit the stage when their time is up. The stage manager signaled to Mariah it was time. As she stepped onto the stage, the audience applauded, some enthusiastically, others seemingly unsure after Maher's introduction. Mariah smiled warmly at the audience, then turned to face Maher, who remained seated, not standing to greet her as was customary for guests. Mariah Carey, everyone, he said flatly. Welcome to the show. I'm surprised you recognized the cue to come out. I figured you'd be late. As usual, Mariah took her seat, crossing her legs elegantly, straightening her posture. She didn't respond to the jab, instead saying pleasantly, "Thank you for having me, Bill. I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time." The audience fell silent, sensing the tension. This wasn't going to be a standard celebrity interview. So, Maher began, leaning back in his chair with a smug expression. Let's talk about this new Christmas album. What is it, your 5th? 6th? I've lost count of how many times you've repackaged All I Want for Christmas Is You. Do your fans really need another version? The audience shifted uncomfortably. Mariah's smile remained steady, but her eyes flashed. It's actually my third Christmas album in 30 years, Bill, she corrected him gently. And yes, my fans have been asking for new holiday music. The Christmas spirit brings joy to people year-round. Something I think we could all use more of these days. Maher rolled his eyes. Christmas in May. Come on. Isn't this just a cash grab? Because the streaming numbers on your regular music aren't what they used to be. A few uncomfortable laughs came from the audience. Mariah took a sip of water, maintaining her composure. I'm curious, Bill, she said. Have you actually listened to any of my non-Christmas music from the past decade? My last album received critical acclaim for its artistic innovation. I've heard enough, Maher cut in. Let's be honest, most people only remember you for that one Christmas song and those whistle notes you don't hit anymore. When was the last time you actually performed live without backing tracks? The audience gasped. This was crossing a line even for Maher. The producer, visible from offstage, made a cutting motion signaling Maher to ease up, but he ignored it. Just last month, actually, Mariah replied, her voice cool but firm. I performed a 12-minute medley of my hits at the Kennedy Center Honors, completely live. President Turner was there. You should look it up. Maher waved his hand dismissively. Probably heavily edited. Look, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Female pop stars have an expiration date and an expiration date. Mariah interrupted, her voice suddenly stronger. Is that what you think of women in music? That we somehow lose value over time? She leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Bill, what exactly have you created in your career that people will still be listening to, still be finding comfort in 50 years from now? The audience let out a collective. Ooh. A few people clapped. Maher's expression hardened. I've been telling hard truths on television for decades, he said, his voice rising. I don't need to create pop fluff to make a difference. Pop fluff, Mariah echoed, raising an eyebrow. Is that how you describe music that helps people through their hardest moments? The songs I get letters about every day from people who say my music saved their lives during depression, during loss, during times when they felt completely alone. Maher scoffed. Oh, please spare me the self-importance. You sing about butterflies and rainbows and Christmas presents. And you, Mariah countered, make cheap jokes at others' expense and call it political commentary. Her voice remained measured, but there was a new intensity to it. But here's the difference between us, Bill. When I received criticism early in my career about my songwriting, instead of dismissing it, I went back to the studio, worked harder, and released Butterfly, which critics now consider one of the most influential R&B albums of that decade. She paused, looking directly at him. When you receive criticism about your increasingly outdated and offensive viewpoints, especially about women, what exactly have you done to evolve? The audience erupted in applause. Several people stood up. Maher's face flushed red as he shuffled his note cards. We're going to take a quick break, he said tersely to the camera. More with Mariah Carey when we return, if she hasn't stormed off by then. As the commercial break light flashed, the tension in the studio was palpable. The audience buzzed with conversation. Maher leaned over to his producer, clearly agitated, while Mariah calmly accepted a touch-up from a makeup artist who had rushed onto the stage. The producer approached Mariah. Miss Carey, I want to apologize for the tone of. No need, Mariah said with a smile. I came prepared for this conversation, and we're just getting started. The makeup artist whispered something in Mariah's ear, and she nodded. As the floor director counted down to the return from commercial, Mariah pulled out her phone and set it on the small table beside her chair. The audience murmured, wondering what was coming next. The on-air light flashed back on. Maher had composed himself during the break, his expression once again controlled and slightly condescending. Welcome back to Late Night America. We're here with Mariah Carey discussing her career and her, feelings about criticism. Actually, Bill, Mariah said pleasantly, I'd like to discuss something else. You've made it clear what you think about my musical contributions, but I'm curious about your thoughts on professional respect in the entertainment industry. He shrugged. I respect talent and authenticity. What about it? That's interesting, Mariah said, reaching for her phone. Because I did some research before coming here tonight. I'd like to share something with you and the audience if that's all right. Before Maher could object, Mariah nodded to someone off stage. The large screen behind them suddenly displayed a video. a compilation of Maher's comments about female artists over the past 5 years. Clip after clip showed him dismissing women over 40 as desperate, past their prime, and clutching to relevance. The comments about their appearances were particularly harsh. The audience watched in stunned silence as the 92-second montage played. Maher's face grew increasingly red. "What is this?" he demanded when the screen went dark. "You can't just—" "I can't what?" Mariah asked calmly. "Play back your own words? I thought you prided yourself on telling it like it is. Isn't that your whole brand?" Scattered applause broke out in the audience. Maher turned to glare at them. "You've taken those completely out of context," he protested. "Have I?" Mariah picked up her phone again. "Let's look at another clip then. This one's from just last month." The screen lit up again, this time showing Maher in an interview with another talk show host. "The problem with these older female singers," he was saying, "is they don't know when to quit. Specifically, that Christmas song lady. What's her name? Mariah Carey. She's been coasting on one song for decades. I'd rather listen to Jingle Bells played with actual bells than her screeching high notes again." Gasps echoed through the studio. Even Maher's most loyal audience members looked uncomfortable. "So, you plan to ambush me on my own show?" Maher said, his voice rising. "This is completely unprofessional." "Is it unprofessional to come prepared?" Mariah asked. "Or is it unprofessional to invite a guest to your show with the intention of humiliating them for ratings?" Because only one of us knew what the other really thought before this interview began. The audience erupted in applause. Someone shouted, "Tell him, Mariah." Maher tried to regain control. "Look, I make jokes about everyone. It's what I do. If you can't handle criticism—" "Criticism," Mariah interrupted, her voice still remarkably calm. "Bill, I've faced genuine criticism my entire career. I've had reviewers analyze my vocal technique, my songwriting, my production choices. All fair game. What you do isn't criticism. It's mockery without substance." She leaned forward slightly. "And here's what I find fascinating. You mock female artists for their appearance, their age, their relevance. All things that have nothing to do with their actual art. When was the last time you actually critiqued a woman's work rather than her existence?" The silence in the studio was deafening. Even Maher seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Mariah continued, her voice softening. "You know, I wasn't planning to share this publicly, but I think it's important." She paused, taking a breath. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with bipolar II disorder. For years, I suffered in silence, afraid of exactly this kind of public ridicule, if people knew. I feared being reduced to a diagnosis, being called crazy or unstable. The audience was completely still now, hanging on her every word. During those years, I received letters from fans sharing how my music helped them through their own mental health struggles, and I felt like a fraud because I wasn't brave enough to speak my truth. A tear slipped down her cheek, but her voice remained steady. When I finally shared my diagnosis publicly, the response was overwhelming. Not because people pied me, but because seeing someone they admired be vulnerable gave them permission to be vulnerable, too. Do you have any idea how many people reached out to say they finally sought help because I did? Maher shifted uncomfortably in his chair. For once, he didn't interrupt. "So when you sit there and reduce my entire career to one Christmas song, when you mock me for still creating music in my 50s, as though I should disappear once I've reached some arbitrary age limit, you're not just insulting me. You're sending a message to every woman watching that her value has an expiration date, that her contributions matter less as she ages, that her voice should gradually fade away." Mariah wiped away the tear and straightened her shoulders. "And beyond that, you're telling anyone struggling with mental health that they're right to stay silent because people like you are waiting to turn their pain into a punchline." The studio was absolutely silent. Then from somewhere in the back row, a woman began to clap. Others joined in row by row until the entire audience was on their feet. Maher looked out at his own audience, visibly shaken by their reaction. For the first time in the interview, perhaps for the first time in years, he looked genuinely uncertain. He began, then stopped. He looked down at his cards, then set them aside. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything right now," Mariah said gently. "Just listen. Sometimes that's all any of us need to be truly heard." The final segment of Late Night America continued in a way no one could have predicted. Bill Maher, the man famous for never backing down, sat in unusual silence as Mariah spoke about the power of empathy in public discourse. "We can disagree about music, about politics, about almost anything," she said, but we don't need to strip away each other's humanity in the process. As the show neared its end, Maher finally spoke again, his usual sarcastic tone noticeably absent. "I've built a career on being the guy who says what others won't," he admitted. "But maybe sometimes I've confused being truthful with being cruel. That's something I should think about." The audience, still on their feet, applauded this moment of unexpected vulnerability. "Would you?" Maher hesitated, clearly outside his comfort zone. "Would you be willing to perform something before we go?" "Not the Christmas song," he added quickly with a hint of his old self. "Something else." Mariah smiled. "I'd be honored." Within minutes, the band had set up and Mariah stood center stage. The lights dimmed except for a single spotlight. Without introduction, she began to sing Hero, not with the power notes and vocal runs she was famous for, but softly, intimately, as though she were singing to each person individually. As she reached the chorus, "And then a hero comes along with the strength to carry on," the camera panned across the audience. People were crying openly, holding hands with strangers, completely transfixed. Even the studio crew, who had seen countless performances over the years, stood motionless, many wiping away tears. In the front row, a young woman in her 20s sobbed quietly, mouthing the words along with Mariah. When the song ended, the silence held for several heartbeats before the audience erupted in thunderous applause. Maher stood up behind his desk, applauding with them, visible emotion on his face. "Mariah Carey, everyone," he said, his voice rough. For once, he had no clever quip, no cynical remark. As the credits began to roll, something unprecedented happened. Maher walked around his desk and embraced Mariah. The cameras caught him whispering something in her ear and her nodding in response before they pulled apart, both with tears in their eyes. The aftermath was immediate and massive. Within minutes of the show ending, clips of the confrontation and Mariah's performance flooded social media. Mariah versus Maher and Then a Hero comes trended worldwide on every platform. Morning shows picked up the story, playing portions of the exchange and debating its significance. "What we witnessed last night wasn't just a celebrity feud," said one cultural commentator. "It was a moment of genuine cultural reckoning about how we treat women in the public eye, especially as they age." Fan reactions poured in by the thousands. "I've watched Mariah since I was a kid. Seeing her stand up to Maher while remaining so graceful made me cry. As someone with bipolar disorder, hearing Mariah speak about her experience on national TV means more than I can express. I've been a Maher fan for years, but Mariah exposed something ugly about how he speaks about women. I hope he meant what he said about reflecting." The young woman who had been crying in the audience was interviewed by a morning show. "I've struggled with depression for years," she explained. "Mariah's music has been my lifeline through the darkest times. Seeing her speak her truth so powerfully, then sing Hero directly to us, it felt like she was singing to me personally. I'll never forget that moment." Industry figures weighed in as well. Veteran female artists praised Mariah for standing up not just for herself, but for all women in entertainment. Male colleagues of Maher expressed hope that this would mark a turning point in how he approached criticism. 3 days after the show aired, Maher posted a statement on his social media accounts, something he rarely did. "Throughout my career, I've prided myself on challenging sacred cows and refusing to apologize. But sometimes being the tough guy means acknowledging when you've been wrong. My treatment of Mariah Carey and other female artists has been inexcusable. The easy thing would be to blame comedy or claim I was misunderstood. The harder thing is to admit I've been perpetuating harmful attitudes about women, especially as they age. I'm committing to doing better. And to Mariah, thank you for the masterclass in dignity and strength." Mariah responded simply with a heart emoji and the words, "Growth is always possible." A week later, Mariah's new Christmas album was released earlier than planned due to overwhelming demand. It debuted at #1, becoming her highest charting album in years. But it wasn't just the Christmas songs that were streaming. Her entire catalog saw a resurgence as new listeners discovered the depth and range of her work. Beyond the holiday hits, perhaps most significantly, mental health organizations reported a surge in calls and website visits in the days following the interview, with many callers specifically citing Mariah's openness about her bipolar disorder as their inspiration to seek help. 6 months later, Maher invited Mariah back on his show, not as a guest, but as a co-host for a special episode about mental health awareness and the treatment of women in the entertainment industry. Their conversation, now collaborative rather than confrontational, sparked a new tradition of annual specials dedicated to topics typically overlooked in late-night comedy. The showdown between Bill Maher and Mariah Carey became more than viral entertainment. It became a cultural touchstone, a moment when the power of vulnerability overcame the allure of cynicism, when compassion proved more compelling than conflict. As for that unforgettable performance of Hero, it has been viewed over 500 million times online. The comments section is filled with stories of healing, of courage found, of lives changed by witnessing authentic emotion in an age of carefully curated public images. In a world often defined by division, Mariah's response to cruelty with compassion reminded us all that sometimes the most powerful voice isn't the loudest or the most critical. It's the one that speaks truth with grace and opens hearts along the way. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced a moment when someone's vulnerability changed your perspective? Let us know. And stay tuned for our next video where we'll explore another unforgettable celebrity confrontation that changed more than just careers. It changed lives.